This revolution is filled with so many ironies, really. First, you tell us that it is manly to keep your word, right? If you are a man, you keep your word. And now all of the black people in this country are demanding, and even the black people in the whole world are demanding, is that you keep your word. You told us we were free. Well then, show us that we're free. You told us that there is justice, equality for all in this country. Well then, stick to your word, and let us see the justice and equality for all. Or else admit to us that you're not a man, you're a bird, you're afraid of us, you're afraid to give us equal stand. You're afraid that if you give us equal ground, that we will match you and we will override you.
can kill all the black folks you want to, baby, but you will not kill the freedom of black folks. It's coming. We're going to get it. We fought every one of your damn lousy wars, baby, and you give us nothing. Now, the war is going to be here, but we're going to be free. Now, you kill you want to, but we kill too.
Good evening, family. Oh man, so hopefully this audio is going through okay. I thought I would start out with the track that I am still waiting for, the full 60-minute track from DJ Helliva, but you know, I'll continue to wait. I'm patient. I'm patient. I'm old. So I really don't have anything else better to do. So I'm gonna wait for the full length track, as it were. I put this cast together tonight for a couple reasons. I've kind of sat around and watched people talk recklessly over the last several days. It's been a tad bit unfortunate, I'll be honest with you, because some of the people that I've seen talking reckless, you never really see them say anything positive. So when they talk reckless and it's on a negative end, you know, I generally discount that shit, but I'm going to speak to some of what I've seen out there, and I don't need to name names tonight. Y'all motherfuckers know who you are, but you also know who I am. So I'm going to speak truth. I know a lot of y'all probably in this situation, like, why is he making a post about this? Based on the stuff that I usually post about. Stick around and you'll understand why. One of the big things for me is always being on the right side of shit. And it's not always me that has to be right, because sometimes I'm wrong. But if I end up on the right side of it, I could have been totally wrong about something, but be on the right side of it, I at least know that I did the right thing and my heart was in the right place. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to kind of break down, because I know there's people out here saying, yeah, why is he doing this or this and that and the other. It's not so much that I couldn't do it, because I mean, hell, it's the interwebs. You can do anything. You can say anything about anybody, you know, as long as you don't do it slanderous, to where you can be sued, or, you know, make up things, you know, where you make yourself look bad, make them look bad, whomever. But obviously anybody knows who I am. They know I'm not here for that tonight. I've spoke very little on Amani based on his present situation. I created a hashtag called Monopoly Money. Well, it's Monopoly Money. And I did that like basically when he first got into high school. I had seen him play in junior high school, and I was a little bit disappointed when he chose not to play the next year, but I understood. Just as I've understood a lot of things that his parents have attempted to do or have done through the course of bringing him, you know, to this point. Now, some people have said things about his parents and they may know them personally. Now, me, I'll put it right out here on the table. I don't believe Edith knows me, and this is Amani's mom. I don't believe she knows me from a can of paint. We may have met after one of his basketball games at Lincoln. May have. I can't actually say we did, but we may have. EJ, I know. Elgin, and that's the name. We're going to use his government name tonight. You know, we all know him as EJ. We've always known him as EJ, but he is Elgin. So entitling this Edith and Elgin, I wanted to take everything and just kind of strip it down, because I know him as EJ, but the world knows him as Amani's dad, or Coach Bates, or Bates Fundamentals. And Amani, I'm not sure exactly how he addresses his pops. If he calls him dad, daddy, pops, whatever, I'm not sure exactly what he calls him. OG, I'm not sure exactly what he calls him. But I think we need to break everything down at this point. And I've got a little bit of time, so I'm going to walk this as slow as I need to. So we don't need any of the nicknames. We don't need anything but just based on what I'm going to talk about tonight, because it'll have something to do with basketball, but it'll have very little to do with basketball. I don't have any videos. I don't have any highlight clips. I do have some images that I've uploaded. I want to make sure that I don't get too far ahead of myself. I didn't write a thing down. And as a writer, that's tough for me, especially when I know I want to be totally on point. But I felt like this needed to come more from my head and my heart versus having a whole lot of scripted shit ready. I'm going to speak to the images and through the images that I'll bring up. And by now, we obviously all know who we're talking about. We're talking about Emoni Bates, young basketball phenom. See, and I know a lot of people are going to have an issue with me still calling him a basketball phenom, but you put him in comparison to who you know in your clique, in your network as a basketball player. Emoni is still a basketball phenom. I don't care from which heights you think he's fallen from. He's still a basketball phenom. He's still regarded as one of the top players in the country. When you look at all the players that are in the country, he's still along the upper echelon of players. So there's nothing that I can do but call him a young basketball phenom. And in the last, I don't know how many years, coming out of Ann Arbor, Michigan, he was probably the most highly touted basketball player, I would have to say, since maybe Eric Sandifer. I don't think anybody has been as highly regarded since Eric Sandifer as, and some of you won't even know who Eric Sandifer is. You'd have to look his name up. But I don't believe there's anybody. And as far as we know, he's probably the biggest high school player over the last 20 years, projected at some points to be the number one everything. And yeah, of course we're here, but we're not here to talk about where he was to where he's here. We're here to talk about him still being Emoni Bates, basketball player, but he's Edith and Elgin's son. So we're going to speak more to that than anything, because a lot of you came into this Emoni Bates sphere when they really started talking him up when he was at Lincoln High School. And as a 9th grader, he won the state championship in the state of Michigan. And I'm not sure exactly how many 9th graders have done that. I don't know any that have done it here in the state of Michigan. But he won the state championship as a 9th grader. And then he also was the youngest Gatorade National Player of the Year. So there were all types of things that he had going for him, obviously coming into high school, but to win the state championship, because that's really what you thrive to do when you're on the level of him and the type of team that he was playing with. You thrive to win the state championship. That's your biggest thing. You know, not ESPN appearances, not winning awards. Your biggest goal is to win the state championship as a high school player. And Emoni did that as a 9th grader. He did that as a 9th grader. Okay. So, I'm not here to talk about whose fucking fault it was, OG Classic Jones. I'm here to talk about his parents tonight. So I'm setting the stage. The title of this is not Emoni Bates and who he could play for and this, that, and the other. I'm not worried about all that shit. So we're not even on that. Okay. So pump your brakes on that shit. So where I'm at right now is he did what most kids who are trying to get to that next level, they're thriving to do as a high school player. He did it in his first year. So for many people, they would probably think like, where can he go from here? You know, I mean, he wins the state championship as a 9th grader. Where could he go from here? And they were looking at him in a space where, like I said, in this area, we hadn't seen this type of talent in years, decades, really. We've had some great players come through Washtenaw County, but I'm talking about with the hype that Emoni had. And it was, to me, it was absolutely just due hype, because everybody can say they've got a great player, whether it be in their family, on their team, in their area, in their city, in their state, but not everybody gets LeBron James to tweet about them. So you got to understand where I'm at. When I saw things like this coming up on a regular basis, I'm like, okay, he's good. Okay, he's really good. Okay, he's great. But then when you've got LeBron James, who has two potential NBA players in his household, saying that he's up next. He's up next. He could speak only about his kid. LeBron James doesn't have to speak about anybody. You got to understand, I am still not a LeBron James fan. After watching him bust Detroit Pistons ass, and I was sitting there live to see it, I was hot. Hold on a second. I got a little feedback coming in here. Let me see what I can do. Okay. When I saw how good of a player LeBron James was as a young player, I was great with it. Until he beat my team, the way he beat my team single-handedly, I was upset. I mean, it just made no sense how great he was as a young player. Now, he's achieved all he's achieved through his career, and then he's given people like Amani Bates that type of love. Now, I didn't go back into the tweets of when he made this tweet and see if he said that about 10 other high school basketball players. I didn't, but I don't think he did. I don't remember ever seeing or hearing anybody talk about LeBron James tweeting about other players. Of course he's seen other players, and of course he's taking pictures with other players, but he said Amani was up next. He said he was next. And my situation was clear cut. It was really clear cut that I didn't want to do anything but just sit back and watch this kid grow and fulfill all of the potential that was building up. That's all I wanted to see, but I knew there had to be more than just him going out and playing basketball. If he was going to be at the level that LeBron James said he's up next, if he was going to be at that level. So after winning the state championship, and we'll go back to this picture, because I believe if not all of these other players, if they're not in the NBA, they're on their way. But Amani was rated number 1. And that's ESPN across the top there. That's not Fox Detroit Sports. That's not M Live News. That's ESPN. And I know that they have flawed stats and whatnot, but at one time they looked at Imani as the number 1 player in the country. So he didn't just get to being that. He didn't just get to being that because he was a great basketball player. He had to have a foundation. He had to have Edith. He had to have Elgin. He had to have good coaching. And thankfully for him, luckily for him, because every kid's not fortunate enough to have their father coach them along the way. I would have loved to have had a father who would have been able to guide me along the way, not just with sports, but just in life. And Amani's had that. Whereas you see a lot of kids who make it into higher levels of sports and different things, a lot of them come from single parent homes. And that's why they always look at it as such a great achievement when this kid makes it out of a single parent home. And then they act like it's no big deal when a kid makes it out of a 2-parent home. Sometimes that's even harder because you may have one parent who may just be pulling and they just want their kid happy. And then you have the other parent that says, nah, this kid is a dog. This kid is a beast. This kid is going to do everything. And that might just cause friction between the parents. And then it really relies on how much the kid actually loves what is being pushed upon them to get them to the next level. So for me, I just really wanted to sit back and enjoy. And the fact that he didn't play for my alma mater, that kind of sucked because I really wanted to see their games. And at the time when I was going to a lot of those basketball games, I was going to see my kid cheer. I really wasn't going to the basketball games. I was going to see my kid cheerlead. Basketball game just happened to be going on at the same time. And then there were the times that we got a chance to have the best of both worlds. I got a chance to see her cheer. We got a chance to see a basketball game. Then they played Amani's team. So, you know, it was a great thing. And then when they weren't playing, then we would go to some of those games, you know, and it was a great thing, you know, and I was feeling good, really good about seeing how this kid had grown into what they were already calling him the next best thing. They were calling him this. And it was a scenario of, okay, he wins the state championship. Now what? And then they go out the next year and the season was cut short due to COVID. Okay. And so then it's just like, okay, now what? Well, then came the making of IPSI Prep, which was out of the mindset, I would have to believe, of Edith and Elgin, because essentially it was Amani's school. It was his showcase. It was a place for him to be able to work independently on his skills, still have substantive education, and await his turn, because he had already been quoted as, well, he wasn't quoted, but it had already been stated that he was up next. So this was the move that was made. He went to IPSI Prep. And I know some people say, oh, it's a fake school. It was this, it was that. I don't care. Whatever it was legitimate. Whatever academic curriculum that was put in place, it was legitimate. And it got him to the point where he was able to play games against talent all around the country versus just around his city, versus around his country, around his state. And he was able to do what he wanted to do. And that was play basketball. Okay. And play against the top talent in the country. Now, a lot of people will say he didn't always play against the top talent. Well, what would he have played against if he had played at IPSI Lincoln? Would he have played against better talent if he had stayed at IPSI Lincoln? Absolutely not. He most indeed played against better talent than he would have played against had he just stayed locally. And people that don't know what they're talking about just like to talk. But if you've seen some of the talent that he had played around with locally, you would have understood that when he went to Texas and wherever these places were that they would play, and then some of the games would be nationally televised games, they're obviously playing against better talent. He was playing with better talent on his team and then playing against better talent. But I think what most people didn't like, and where most people kind of shied away from things, because they didn't really understand how he could be at IPSI Lincoln one year and then have this school essentially built for him the next year. They didn't understand how that worked. Well, there's, criteria for everything. And obviously the criteria was met because he didn't become ineligible for college. And he obviously didn't have to sit out any of that and then have to wait to get drafted or whatever, or just play in AAU leagues or however that all works out. Everything went along in a timely fashion. Obviously, all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. So he went on, and IPSI Prep was the place where he would go on to play basketball. And he started to get what I consider still to this day, just do hype. I mean, people literally had bought in because they had seen enough. They had seen enough, and they might have not even seen as much as I had seen, because I had been watching him play for years. I mean, Amani was playing against high school kids in 4th and 5th grade. How many 4th and 5th grade kids do you know that could hang with high schoolers? And not just kids just on the basketball court. I'm talking about legitimate high school kids. And then when he makes it into junior high school and he averages 45 points a game, I could kind of understand why his father said, you know what, maybe it's not a real good thing for us to play these 7-8 games that they play in a junior high season. Maybe we just bypass that and just work out independently and get you ready for high school. But see, a lot of people didn't understand that. And it's understandable why people don't understand that, because they don't see a lot of it. So when you don't see something, you don't understand something, you tend to talk against it, or you tend to not say anything at all. Because I've always just felt one thing. When you have something like this in your midst, and Amani was in our midst, he is in our midst. Edith and Elgin are in our midst. When you protect it. You do everything you can to protect it. Anybody who knows me, if you've watched me once, if you watched me 100 times, you understand where I come from. I come from the aspect of family, teamwork, camaraderie. We galvanize, we stay together. I don't deal with all that bullshit. I don't believe that you can do anything in this world on your own and be successful. There is no such thing as a self-made millionaire. If you make millions, you took somebody else to make them with you. You either use them or you utilize them, but you don't make anything in this planet by yourself. Absolutely not. And where Amani was, had people talking about him, Amani Bates, if anybody can score in the NBA, I think it's that kid. Now, let's just talk about walking onto the court and getting a bucket against an NBA player, because that's just not the easiest thing to do. Even though I feel like the NBA has fallen off drastically from what it used to be as far as the toughness of the league and the skills of the players. I know people jump high and they shoot from half court and all that shit, but fundamentally, I still don't think that a lot of these kids could play with the kid. Well, I say kids, people back in the day, you know, just because I don't believe they have all of the same fundamental built in. You know, athletically, they some of them may be more athletic than some of the former players, but some of them aren't even close to being as athletic or as strong as some of the players that came up well before them. Now, Amani comes in with this type of hype where they think that as a high school kid, he could just walk on a court and score a bucket against an NBA player. That's just not an easy thing to do. But when you're talked up like this, it's not that difficult to get that type of situation happening, especially once you've had somebody's tweet about you by the name of LeBron James. I mean, come on now. LeBron James had tweeted about him, and then all of a sudden he's in his own environment, and he's got people saying he could actually score in an NBA game. So still, the sky is the limit. The sky is the limit. And you don't get that far without having a great foundation. Edith and Elgin had to provide a foundation for him. I don't care about his attitude. I don't care about whether you think he's cocky or he's arrogant, he's this, he's that. He had to have a good foundation. He had to have a good work ethic. He had to be who all of these people say he had to be, or he wouldn't have gotten to this point. And that all starts with his parents. That doesn't start with him. His maturity level does not take him there. That starts with the discipline of his parents to keep him in line. And one of the things, I know that first image that I showed that where he was like top 5, I remember back then because they didn't have this kid listed in it. And maybe because there was a difference in grade and things like that. I'm not sure exactly how that all played out, but I thought that was just playing to the calendar year and not so much the graduation year. But he ended up playing a kid named Chet Holmgren. A lot of y'all know Chet. If you know basketball, you know Chet. Unfortunately, Chet is going to miss the first year of his NBA career because personally, I believe Chet suffered from one of those injuries from being overworked. I believe Chet worked the same line that Amani worked. We didn't see Chet because we're in Washington County. We saw Amani, but I bet you if you went to Chet's IG and you went to Chet's area, Chet was hyped the same way Amani was hyped. And he was hyped all around the country the same way Amani was hyped. And there was a game that these two played against one another, and I saw things from Chet that I hadn't seen truthfully, honestly, blatantly, unapologetically. I ain't seen a white player play like that since that dude from French Lick. And I've seen a lot of Caucasian players. I know everybody's on, what's his name, Luca something. I know everybody's on him, but I never saw Luca at this age. I think Luca damn near 30 now. He's like 20-something. He's a rookie. Luca ain't young. Luca been playing for years. And if he ain't young, he looked like he's 30. So I don't really know how old Luca is anyway. But this kid here was the truth. And when him and Monty played against one another, I saw things from him that I hadn't seen from even Amani. Because Amani, as great as he is, I felt like this kid had the ridiculous skill set that I just hadn't seen from whether it be a black or a white player, at least just looking at him. I've seen a lot of TV games, a lot of highlights and stuff like that, but I watched that whole game. I might have missed 45 seconds, might have came back from a timeout late from going to the bathroom, but I watched that whole game. And I had seen Amani play, so who I was really focusing on was Chet. And Chet Mix is what they calling him, I guess, nowadays, because his game is ridiculous. He got a little bit of something. I mean, to be able to get a rebound, what, he's 16, 17 years old, to be able to get a rebound at 7 feet, go coast to coast with handles and dunk on whoever is in the lane, you know, hey, there ain't much you can say about that. Or just go down, you know, on a 1-on-3 break. You know what? I ain't got numbers. I'm just going to pull this 3 up. At 7 feet, that's just kind of unheard of, at least in this area. Maybe they have it somewhere else, but they ain't got it here. But what we had was Amani, and Amani got his that night. I believe he had 30 plus that night. And Chet just had a ridiculous game, but it showed me, I'm like, okay, so we're kind of in our own little bubble here in Washtenaw County, but there's players like this all around the country. And then you got them other players that are going to be on the next level. So I'm thinking like, okay, so, you know, they're giving him all types of hype. They're giving him all types of praise. And I get it. I totally get it. Because hell, like we can go back to the beginning. He won the state championship as a freshman in high school, as a 9th grader. He won the whole shebang as a 9th grader. That doesn't happen. That does not happen. But seeing that it did, they kept moving. Then Ipsy Prep came. Then he starts playing nationally ranked players like Chet Mix. You had to know what was coming after that. I didn't understand reclassification before. Somebody really had to break it down. I didn't think you could really skip a year and go to college a year earlier just as easy as it seemed like it happened. And maybe it was really difficult. Maybe he had to test out and get some scores. I don't know exactly what it was. But whatever it was, it was a scenario that it happened. He reclassified. And he graduated essentially from high school last year. So we're in the fall of 2022. So he graduated from high school last year. Okay. And to know his family, I know they felt like they were doing the best thing for him, for his career. But you can't call anything. Things are just going to happen. They're going to fall in place the way they fall in place. Was Amani Bates ready to graduate from high school and go to college? Maybe not. Maybe not. But maybe he was. Because what else was there for him at the high school level? And he couldn't just sit still and be dormant. He had to keep moving, so he had to go to the next level. And there was a lot of hype, like, where's he going to go? Where's he going to go? Where's he going to go? And I'm not going to take everybody through that because I think we know where he ended up. And he ended up at Memphis. And I'm sure he had sat down with his parents, and I'm sure Edith and Elgin weighed out all the options. What's going to be best for his future? What do you think, Amani? What do you think, Dad? What do you think, Mom? When they had that round table, I'm sure. And dealing with all the people that were coming, I can't even imagine the chaos that they had to deal with through the recruiting process. I was never in the midst of it, never achieved anywhere close to the type of notoriety that an Amani Bates has. Don't really know anybody that did. I knew some players athletically that, yeah, they were touted in football and basketball, but I hadn't seen this. I hadn't seen this ever, truthfully, ever. Sorry about that feedback. I got something going somewhere that shouldn't be happening, but I'm going to sit still. Turn everything down here so I don't get any feedback. If I got feedback coming through there, I apologize for that. I hear it every now and then through the phone, so hopefully it's not coming through the mic. But when you look at this image, the comparisons that came in about him and Kevin Durant, I always thought were unfair. I thought they were unfair. I thought it was flattering for Amani to be compared to, such a great shooter, a great scorer, great player. But at this point right here, he's still, 16, almost 17 or 17, because now he's just 18. So when you're putting that type of pressure on a young kid, and I know that they say, dogs like that, bulls like that, da-da-dee, they thrive on that type of stuff. That's a lot of pressure to put on a youngin'. Because Kevin Durant, and he's another player that I'm not fond of, not because he ever beat the Detroit Pistons, who was my homer team, but I've just not liked the way he's kind of gone about his career. Great player, athletically. I mean, one of the best strokers ever. One of the best ever. But I just don't like the way, I don't like these guys when they flip-flop on teams and stuff, so I kind of fell out of favor when he started chasing the ring. Not what we're here for tonight, but you look at the form of Amani and you look at the form of Kevin Durant, you can obviously see who he somewhat models his shooting style after. So the comparisons were there. If you've seen him play, you see the rise that he gets on his shot. The comparisons are there. And the fact that he's a winner. He doesn't just get buckets, he's a winner. He won the state championship as a ninth grader. And a lot of people could just chalk that up to him being a great basketball player. I have to chalk it up to him having great parents. That's what I have to chalk that up to. You don't get there without having a good foundation. So, with that being said, understanding what happened at Memphis, and he ended up leaving. I got it. I totally got it. I totally got that he didn't make it happen, as some would say, at Memphis. But to me, he didn't fall from this potential. Maybe it was just going to take him a little longer to get to where they thought that he already was. Maybe he wasn't where they thought he really was then. And I've heard all types of stories about it being politically driven and he had the machine working for him and this, that, and the other. I'm sorry, but I just didn't see that. I didn't see that because I was at a lot of the home games. We went to the games at the George Gervin. They called it the Convocation at that point. But we went to away games. Hell, I went to games where I was turned away at because local people wanted to see him so much. It was like going to see a college game. Hell, it was like going to see a pro game. But I didn't see that he had this huge machine working for him. And this was in his freshman and sophomore year that he's getting all of these accolades and winning all of these awards and winning state championships and whatnot. This wasn't when he was at Ipsy Prep, when everything really was centralized around him. Absolutely not. I mean, he's just in a regular public school environment at this point. So when he went to Memphis and things didn't work out, I mean, I got it. But my thing that I didn't get was, okay, you go to Memphis and you make it happen there, and then you go pro. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen. And what didn't happen was him running it to the finish line. Because I didn't expect him to stay there 4 years. I just didn't. I mean, what player of his caliber stays in college for 4 years at this point? If they say you're the number one player in the country as a ninth grader, if they say that you could score in NBA games as a ninth and a 10th grader, why are you going to hang around college for 4 years? Not to say that he's not scholastically driven, but one of the things that, like I said, I don't know Edith from a can of paint, but I do know his dad. I do know Elgin. And the last several times that I probably saw Elgin outside of a gym was at a gas pump. I don't know what it is about us picking gas up at the same time, but I've gotten gas with Elgin several times at the same time at Sam's Club gas station. And just during those times, we would just kick it for a couple minutes. Most of the time, he was on the phone, but every now and then we would kick it, you know. And I always have the words of truth, and a lot of my words of truth are going to come from that side. They're going to come from an encouragement side, because I already know, no matter what's really in his mind, he's got to be in this state at this point. Like, everybody's going to want something at some point. Why? How couldn't he think that? I mean, you've got the golden goose, and sooner or later, people are going to start coming for this and coming for that and coming for these and coming for those. But see, I never asked for anything. Never, ever. Not even a free ticket to get into one of his games. I didn't care. I was coming regardless. And that's not me anyway. So the only thing that I could ever offer was truth. And I would talk to him and tell him, you know, we riding with you, you know, building that fence around the family, da-da-dee-da-da-da. And for me, that was the truth. I mean, I was always pulling for him positively. I never wished anything bad. I didn't care about what moves were being made, because my thing was, at the end of the day, that family has to be happy. That family has to be healthy. And the only way that I think everything was going to work out was if they did what they needed to do, what was best for Amani. And I don't believe that they ever did anything that they thought wasn't best for Amani. And they obviously did some great things, and they sacrificed a ton for Amani for him to have gotten to this level. For him to have gotten to this space, they had to have done some great things. They had to have made sacrifices as a family. He just didn't germinate into a great basketball player. It took hours. It took days. It took weeks. It took months. It took years for him to get to the point where he could put that Memphis uniform on. And that's a uniform that 99% of the kids that are out here playing will never be able to get, whether it be Memphis or just on that level. Most kids aren't going to get there. Not because they don't have parents like Edith and Elgin, but because they just don't have a player that they can mold like Amani. Hopefully I've been able to be followed through this, because this is a situation, like I said, it wasn't here to glamorize and glorify anything, but it was to speak from a parent's perspective, because I truly believe from a parent's perspective, Edith and Elgin did and are doing everything they can to make sure that Amani gets to where he needs to be. So my situation is cut and dry. I'm only going to speak from that vein. So when Amani, you know, when he was at Memphis and he was working, and he was working out with people, you know, like a Carmelo Anthony, you know, one of the great all-time scorers in the NBA. And I've got a ton of pictures that I could have put up, but the reason I did Carmelo and Amani standing behind Carmelo was because if you know basketball, you know Carmelo won the national championship as a freshman in college. Amani won as a freshman in high school, but Carmelo won as a freshman in college. Okay. So for me, I saw some comparisons there. You know, I mean, if you win, you're a winner. And I know that they've beaten Carmelo up throughout his pro career about not getting a ring. But Carmelo did what most people who get an NBA championship ring don't get. He got a national championship in college as a freshman, not just being on the team. He was the star. He was the star. And I'm still upset at Joe Dumars that he didn't pick Carmelo and he picked Darko Milicic and whatever. It still aggravates me to this day. Thanks, Joe. But, because I think he would have got his ring if he came here, because Darko got his shit. Anyways. I'm looking at him work out with people like Melo, like Donnie Mitchell. I mean, one of the up and coming stars. He's not just up and coming. He's a star now. He's a flat out star. I'm late to say he's up and coming. You know, I believe he just got traded. I'm glad he got out of Utah. Shouldn't be no black players playing in Utah anyway. They don't like black people. I ain't never liked Utah anyway, because I didn't like Karl Malone. But I don't like black players going to play in Utah because they don't like black people out there. So it is what it is. That's just where I'm at with that shit. I don't think we should be anywhere where they don't want us. Just like I keep hearing about the WNBA girls talking about they not gonna play in Russia until Brittany Griner is free. The fuck y'all going back there for in the first place? You should never ever play in Russia again. There's plenty of other places to play in this world other than Russia. Brittany Griner is not over there for no goddamn vape cartridges. She's over there because Vladimir Putin hates America and he hates Joe Biden and he hates any American leader. And he's kind of fighting for his life with Ukraine right now. He don't give a fuck. So Brittany Griner is just a sacrificial lamb. That's all that is. But for them to even consider going back there once she's released lets me know there's weakness there. No, you cut them off. We're done playing basketball there. As a matter of fact, we're done coming there athletically, period. We're not going to ever play shit in Russia again. That's what needs to be said. But see, they ain't going to say that because it ain't about athletics. It's about money. Just like we was talking earlier, you know, they was having a damn war and then had some games going on, some type of Olympic type games, and Ukraine was in them. Like, damn, ain't your country's in a war? What y'all still doing playing in these games and shit, trying to win medals? Shouldn't y'all be over there back trying to fight and save y'all country? That's why I know this shit is not about what it's really about. That's why I don't pay much attention to it, and I stay in my political zone, and, you know, Russia ain't fucking with me. Ukraine ain't fucking with me. So I ain't fucking with them. Back to the lecture at hand. So, when things didn't work out, when they did not work out at Memphis, and I don't know all the specifics, and the things that I do know are not relevant to this because we're not here to just talk basketball. We're here to talk about the parental perspective, mine, because I don't know Edith and Elgin's parental perspective. I would love to say that what I'm thinking and what I'm saying is still in the same vein of where they were, because I believe that they have built this infrastructure to make Amani everything that everybody wants him to be and everything that he needs to be and everything that they need him to be. I don't believe that they've done anything to try to hamstring his career, his life in any way. I believe what they've done is they've been parents. And with his father being his coach, he's had the doubly tough task of being a father and a coach, and having to choose in between, because he can't be daddy when he's coaching. He's a coach. Because if he's daddy, he's always going to lean to his son. But as a coach, he's got to stay in the middle because he's got 12 to 15 other players he's got to deal with. More than that, they have a whole organization. If you don't know about Bates Fundamentals, they got young kids, they're way younger than Amani. As a matter of fact, I think at one point he was kind of in the middle. They had younger kids than him, then they had older kids than him. And those kids will come and go and come and go and come and go. And hopefully he'll generate more like-leveled kids like Amani with Bates Fundamentals, because they deserve that. If they're going to work as hard as this kid has worked to get to where he's at, they deserve that. But I'm in a specific mind frame where I'm thinking about the parents. I'm thinking about what they've tried to do, because I don't believe that I've heard this word because I read a lot about things like this. I just don't speak on them all the time because a lot of it I think it's nonsense. A lot of it I think it's opinionated, and it's built to get likes and views and shares, and I don't care about all that. But I've heard this term, and this is in the eye of the beholder. I wasn't there, haven't been there the way I would have to be to speak on this, but I've heard the term overreach. Overreach. And I guess my problem with the term overreach is, how do you know as a parent when you are overreaching? Because you're only looking out for the best interests of your kid. And in a unique situation that Elgin was in, to be running the full organization of Bates Fundamental, he looked out over a lot of kids. He had to overreach on a lot of kids. How many other kids did they say that through these years has he overreached on? Because I know that these are not just coaches that just pull up to the gym and roll basketballs out on the floor and wait for the kids to file on in as they sit in the bleachers and sip their coffee, sip their tea, sip their Gatorade. Hopefully they're not drinking pop. I don't want anybody drinking pop around kids, because kids will drink pop because they see the older people drink pop, they'll drink pop. So hopefully they're not drinking pop. No, I know Elgin and I know other coaches along his level to go be picking kids up. I'm talking about picking the kids up for practice, picking the kids up for games, going out of town, paying for them, paying for their food, paying for their hotels. He just hasn't done that through the course of these years for Amani. He's done it for tens to hundreds of kids. And if you know he's done that, then you know Edith has done that. Because I ain't in their bank account like that. But if you start talking about you got to spend hundreds over a weekend on your kid, what happens when you got to do it times 4 and 5? Now you might be dipping into the family funds. And mama ain't going to like that unless you run that by her. But you know what? She probably is going to like that, because that's why she's with that man. And that's why they produced young Monty. So when I look at these situations, I'm looking at it only from a parent's perspective. This ain't got nothing to do with basketball. We just happen to be talking about a basketball player and his family. But from the parental side, I couldn't give less than a shit about basketball right now, because there's so much hanging on this kid. And this whole transfer portal thing happened, and then he narrowed the schools down, and then he came home. Who says it? You can't go home. You can go home. You can go home. You absolutely can go home. A lot of people say you can't go home. Yeah, you can go home. You can always go home. It's what you do when you come home. And it's what everybody does around you when you come home. Because what I know in my life, I see you, Ghost, absolutely. It's what you do when you go home. See, what's going to happen is two things are going to happen. There ain't no gray area here. It's black and white all day. People going to love the fact that you're back home, and they're going to pull for you. They're going to salute you. They're going to support you. They not going to keep running Memphis by you. They not going to keep running Ipsy Prep by you. They not going to keep running Ipsy Lincoln by you. They happy that you're home. And now you're going to play in front of the home crowd at the same arena that we saw you play so many games at as a high school kid. Now you're going to play college here, and you're going to take classes on that campus. That's what everybody should have been talking about. Not what happened. What happened? What happened? What happened? What happened? What happened? What happened? What? That's clown shit, man. Who gives a fuck what happened? Whatever happened, you can't fix it. You can't fix it. And even if you could have fixed it, you wouldn't have fixed it. Because you the motherfucker that always asking what happening. You not the motherfucker that's making shit happen. I know that's why a lot of y'all don't like me, and I don't give a fuck. People out here talking and don't know shit. Don't know shit because they looking at it from the perspective of a fanatic. I look at things from the perspective of a parent. And the fact that he was home, I'm 100% sure that Edith and Elgin were thankful that he was home. Because now they got their boy back to the point where they can touch him, they can talk to him every day. And when I hear these words like overreach, did they overreach to the point where, okay, he went somewhere where it didn't work out, where it doesn't work out for a lot of kids? Hell, they didn't create the transfer portal for Amani. The transfer portal was already in full effect when Amani got into the transfer portal. And you see people transferring from all different sports, not just basketball. The reason it's a story is because it's here. That's why it's a story. Or the reason it's a story because he was touted as the #1 player in high school basketball at one time. That's why it's a story. But what it should be a story for, it should be a story for people to say, damn, maybe that wasn't the right fit for him. Maybe that wasn't the right fit for his family. But since he's back home, we're going to embrace that. We're going to pull him up. We're going to hold him down. But leave all the bullshit of what happened out. But that's not what happened. These last several days, it's been some clown shit. Straight up clown shit. People just talking, just to talk. And I have a circle that's very, very close to the point where I damn near talk to myself. But the few people that I do let hear my voice on a personal level, I have voiced my concern. I have voiced my opinion. And we have shared it back and forth. And the main thing that I have never, ever ran under the bus has been Edith and Elgin. Because I don't believe, as I've read in so many different things and heard on so many different podcasts and interviews and whatnot, that his parents overreached. Now, maybe there were things that they could have did differently. But when you have two parents who just want the best for their kid, it's kind of hard to say that they're overreaching. But you know what people do get used to? What people do get used to is they get used to these kids going off and letting somebody else pull the strings. And you never even see the parents until draft day. Or if you did see them before, you saw them when they signed their letter of intent, then they went through the collegiate ranks, and then you see them on draft day. But what happened to that kid in between A and Z? A being high school into college and Z being from college into the pros. What happened to that kid? Who was molding that kid? Who was shaping that kid? Because see, I don't believe where Monty sits today, I don't believe Edith and Elgin molded him to be where he sits today. They had molded him to be at the height that he was once at. Absolutely. But I don't believe that they put him in the position that they put him in and where he's at today. And you'd literally have to show me different. I just don't believe that they did. I don't believe that they put themselves or put him at risk in any way at all. Get that out of there. I got to bring one more thing up, because once we found out that Amani was here and he was going to be going to school here, and when there wasn't that full embrace, I was like, okay, why are people indifferent? Because you don't feel that he did the right thing by coming back here, or everybody's so nosy as to why it didn't work out there and this, that, and the other. People have a hard time living in a positive moment. I get Corbett fucked a lot of people up. I get it. But it shouldn't fuck you up to the point where you don't see the positive in a good thing. And I think personally, it was a good thing. If it wasn't going to work out down there, the best thing was for him to come back home. The best thing was for him to come back home, whether people thought it was a good thing or not. But you have to understand where he was. And personally, I didn't mind him playing for Penny. But in this day and age, Memphis ain't the safest place to be. Let me just put it out there. I don't give a fuck, because I don't have no people down in Memphis and don't plan to ever go to Memphis. I was supposed to go to Memphis and go to some barbecue fest, but now that I don't eat meat, I'll never have to go there now. I don't know no vegan spots in Memphis. Everybody eat pork. So I look at him coming back home because things didn't work out the way he needed them to work out. I looked at that as a good thing. I looked at it as a positive thing, whereas some people might not have done so. And where I am now, what my thinking is now is, okay, how do we get him back to that level of how he shot out of the cannon in ninth grade? Because we need that for him now here at Eastern Michigan University. We need that for him right now. Because if we don't get that for him right now, he's eligible to go to the NBA next year. And I don't want to see him go to the NBA and just be drafted. I want to see him achieve the heights of being where he was supposed to be, and that's as a lottery pick. Let me be honest. I don't believe you can go from being the number one high school basketball player to just being satisfied with being drafted. And I think that there is a collective uplift that we need for Amani for that to happen. But first, before you uplift Amani, who do you got to uplift? You got to uplift Edith and Elgin. That's his foundation. That's his base. That's how he got here. Not just in the world. We know how that all happened. But I'm talking about to this level. So we've got to uplift them. But see, some people aren't in that protective mode. Some people aren't in that rebuilding mode. Some people aren't in that reshaping mode. But they in that tear down mode. They in that shit talking mode. They in that clown ass mode. That's why I didn't accept a lot of y'all calls over the last couple of weeks. And after tonight, I won't be accepting y'all calls either. Please understand me. I don't give a fuck. And I'm speaking as a parent. I'm not speaking as a has-been high school athlete, as I was called by one of our local folk heroes, mythical heroes. A has-been high school. I didn't even know I was a has-been high school athlete, but seeing that I was a has-been high school athlete, I must have been a high school athlete. To be known as a has-been, like I said, you must have been to be known as a has-been. And I'm sure at some point somebody gonna tell him about this video and he gonna watch this motherfucker because he's a sports junkie and he's probably gonna catch it. So eat a dick, Mr. Star. I don't give a fuck. You ain't never gonna lay that one down, bruh. So I'm in a situation now where I'm not really waiting for all the facts to come out as to what happened here and what happened there. And I just want this process to work itself through so he can recover. Because he's got to be able to recover. And for him to be able to recover, that means that Edith and Elgin have to recover. My heart dropped when I caught the first text. And by the time I was catching my second, my third, my fourth, up to my 10th text, I was still just trying to make sure the shit was real. Because it didn't seem fathomable to me as to why this had to occur. And the post I think I left was in fucking credible. I believe that's what I left. It was in fucking credible. Because I just didn't see it happening. I call a lot of shit. I call a lot of it. Because I sit on the sidelines and I see things and I think about things and I internalize. And when I'm ready to spit it out, I would have never got this one. I would have never gotten it. Because the way I looked at it was, okay, if he's back home, they got to insulate him. Because I already know that there's a certain faction of people that don't want him to make it. There is a certain faction of people that do not want him to make it, just so they can have shit to talk about. They have nothing against the Bates family. They have nothing against Edith. They have nothing against Elgin. They don't even have anything against Amani. They just don't want to see him make it because that's their life. That's the way they live. Some people can't live without the negativity. There's plenty that can, but there's some that need it to survive. It's nutritious to them. There is a such thing as negative nutrition. Some people feast off of it. And when I saw the post and shit over and over and over and over, I'm like, damn. If we had had that much positivity, maybe we never would have got to this area. If he had felt the love, maybe we never would have got to the point where he would have to feel the hate. And hopefully they have insulated Amani to the point where he has been insulated. He has been put in a position to where he's not seeing a lot of this shit. They need to keep him from social media. It ain't a good space for him right now. But when this dropped, I didn't understand it. Didn't see why it would have been necessary for this to have had to have occurred.
You told us we were free. Well, then show us that we're free.
As a young man, did I carry around a pistol every now and then? Absolutely. But I didn't feel the need to, really. I mean, I was in a couple situations where, you know, I carried larger sums of money for business. So, yeah, I felt the need to have one then. But I've never really felt the need to just always have a gun with me. I just don't. Never had to. Because I don't cross motherfuckers like that. And motherfuckers don't really cross me like that. But some people have come out and said things like, "Oh, young nigga, he thought he needed a gun. He had a gun. He got it." No. That's some of the dumbest shit ever. We ain't talking about just a young nigga off the street. And I'm going to use that term loosely. I'm not using it just because we're talking about a young black male, because y'all know I call white motherfuckers nigga too. But when I hear that shit, when I hear that excuse, that lame ass, clown ass excuse that he needed to have a gun, well, in that case, then why didn't he have a CPL? And why didn't he have it stashed in a proper space if he needed a gun? Because we're not just talking about him having a gun. We're talking about him having a gun that had scraped off serial numbers. That's a whole different beast. And if I was here to just talk about that situation, I would focus more on that situation than just having the gun and getting the gun charge. Because the gun charge, there are certain things that can be dealt with that. But when you start talking about a handgun or any type of firearm with a scraped off serial number, now we're talking about a different beast. You know exactly that I know, Brother Narmer, absolutely. So where we are in this setting, EDITH and ELGIN have a lot of things that they've got to deal with dealing with this situation with Amani. Amani obviously is a centralized figure, but we all know everything that a child does always falls back on the parents. So who's being blamed ultimately for this? Amani or EDITH and ELGIN? Because everybody said, well, not everybody, but the naysayers, that they overreach. There's so many people that have said that. And if they didn't use that specific term, they used the term to the point where they did too much. They were in his business too much. But their business is his business, and his business is their business. And it's not the way I like to see things shape up, because I don't like to see a lot of these kids go off to these schools and have somebody have full control of them and the parents have no control. And in most cases, that's the way it is a lot of times. But when we're dealing with this situation, with this specific situation, and I just want to take this down, to be honest with you, because I don't particularly like it. As a matter of fact, let's see if I can get this up. If I can get this up, then I will finish out with this image. Are we there? Huh. Hold on one second. Boom, 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 boom. But we're where we're where we need to be if we're in the mindset of hanging with this family. Hanging with this family. Why am I not seeing? Give me one quick second. Why is that not going there? Hold on one sec. Him having to deal with the criminal case obviously is going to take him away from basketball temporarily. Now, we know that his father's got to put something in play to make sure that he stays sharp, obviously. So he'll do that, I'm sure. I'm not for certain if he is. I've heard he was suspended from the basketball team, but if he was suspended from the basketball team, did that necessarily mean he was suspended from the school? I haven't even inquired that much because I haven't been that concerned. It's been more about his well-being than anything that I've been most concerned about. I've been most concerned about him and his well-being, his family and their well-being. Basketball was not at the forefront of my thoughts. It was him and his well-being, because this is going to take a direct effect on him moving forward in the world of basketball. We obviously got to understand that. He is not going to be the same Amani Bates when things are said and done, right? There's going to be all types of scenarios that he's going to have to encounter probably before he gets back on the basketball court for Eastern Michigan University or anybody else. So that'd be pretty goddamn selfish of me to think about his basketball career versus thinking about his well-being. And that's just not me. I just don't see that as being the most important thing. The most important thing is this to me. And I appreciate you sticking with me while I rambled through and found that slide. Absolutely, Brother Narmer. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just not the end of the road for him. It's not the end of the road. You know? And if everybody doesn't get on the same page, the road that he's on right here, he may ride out on. Because why would you want to stick around this shit? If he ain't getting no support on the home level, why would you want to stick around to hear this bullshit? And that's why I'm trying to get people to understand this don't have nothing, not a thing to do with basketball. But it's got to do with a young man's life. And he's going to have to live out the rest of these days. He absolutely has got to live out the rest of these days. But who's got to live out the rest of these days with him? First and foremost, EDITH and Elgin. And there's more to this situation, I'm sure, than we all know. Unless you live within their household, I don't believe you know the whole situation. And I wouldn't even care for you to even try to verse it to me if you did. It's not my business. because I don't need to know the facts. I'm not any type of investigator situation here at all. And I'll speak very little on the facts of his criminal case because that's not my business. I care more about this young man's well-being. I care more about this young man's family having to deal with this struggle and get through it and come out on the other side so they can continue to move onward and upward. And if people don't understand that about me, I see why I'm in the same space that I'm in, and they're in the space that they're in, and we're in the spaces that we're in with one another. I love seeing people win, but I'm not the one that runs when they lose, because I done lost enough in my life to understand just because you get your ass knocked out don't mean you stay out. You don't stay out, you don't stay down, and you don't stay injured. You get your ass up, you dust yourself off, and you come back to fight another day. And that's what Monty has to do. Monty's got to fight another day. And hopefully he'll have the same support, if not more, from the people who are already supporting him. And the people who haven't been supporting him, but have been the naysayers, they'll either go away or they'll have a change of heart and say, you know what, we need to band around this family so we can get them on and up out of here. Because the next person that comes along, we can use this as a blueprint of how to stay together. Because I'm trying to tell you, people are only going to salute us as much as we salute ourselves. People are going to condemn us as much as we condemn ourselves. And what we've shown people is that we love to condemn one another. We always love to condemn one. Hell, that's how I got called a has-been high school athlete. And we weren't even talking about my high school athletic career. But I got called a high school has-been athlete, and I was talking about the betterment of young kids. But it was because someone stood in a conversation and didn't know what the hell they was talking about, and they chose to call me out my name, and that's why I will never stop talking about it. Because once you put your foot in your mouth, I be goddamned if I help you take it out. No, I'm gonna help you choke on that motherfucker. Yep. A little bit further. So I see two things happening in this community. As young Amani has to work himself through this judicial system, as his family has to rally around him to get him through this situation, I see people either galvanizing and supporting this family as they justly deserve, or I see a whole bunch of naysayers and dumb motherfuckers just getting online all the time talking shit and waiting for the headlines and shit, and then they want to talk shit. There's only two things that are going to happen. It's not going to be any gray area. It won't be quiet. Only reason it's quiet right now because we're between his arraignment and his prelim. Because after his prelim, there's going to be a whole bunch of fucking posts after that. But all the parties who were truly involved in this situation, hopefully they come forth and they do the right thing, because I've said it before and I'll say it again now publicly. I don't believe that that was his gun. And I don't believe that Amani sat somewhere and filed off a serial number. So whoever's gun it was, if they are his friend, if they are his family, they will step up and step out. If they are his foe, they will stay quiet and they will let Amani fall. They will let Amani fall from the heights that they would have never gotten to, never did get to, and they will let his family fall. And all the work that they've put into this kid in the 18 years that he's been on this planet will go for naught. I just don't see it being 100% his responsibility. Is he culpable if that said gun was his? Possibly. But I don't believe he filed a serial number off of that gun. I just don't. And I think the persons responsible for it, if they call themselves family, if they call themselves a friend, they need to step up. But if they are a foe, then they'll sit back and they'll watch the biggest thing then probably in about 30 years, maybe 40 years, that came out of Washtenaw County go for naught. Literally go for naught. Because that serial number is way more than just a gun charge. And if you know, you know. If you don't, ask, but don't speak ignorantly, at least and not in my presence, because I will clown your monkey ass. But I appreciate the exchanges tonight. Everybody that's been in here that's going to see this, hopefully you understand this is 100% my perspective. I have not spoken to Edith. Like I said, she probably doesn't even know me from a can of paint. And if we did meet at one of those after games and she just shook my hand, she just did it as a formality. She don't know me. EJ knows me. He knows who I am. But I ain't seen him pumping gas in a long time. So like I said, I did this on my own accord. Nobody told me to. Nobody told me not to. Not that it would have mattered. But I hope that people who do see this, they understand. If we don't understand things from the perspective of the parents, we don't really understand, because that's where this all starts. This starts with Amani Bates Foundation, and that's Edith, and that's Elgin. I appreciate y'all. Y'all be good. And if you see this family or you come across this family, just let them know they ain't alone. If you ain't got something positive to say, leave them the fuck alone. One love.